So is there a lost continent hidden under the ice? It's a great question. It sounds like something out of a movie. You imagine explorers in thick parkas drilling through miles of ice. Suddenly, their drill breaks through into open air. They lower a camera and see it. A vast, dark cavern, and in the distance the faint outlines of towers. A lost city. Atlantis, but frozen at the bottom of the world. This idea is powerful. It's been around for a long time in different forms. People talk about mysterious maps, ancient technologies, and a sudden, catastrophic freeze that locked a civilization in time. The internet is full of pictures of pyramid-shaped mountains in Antarctica, claiming they're too perfect to be natural. Well, it's a compelling story. It taps into that part of us that wants the world to be more mysterious than it is. We want to believe there are still huge secrets to uncover. The short answer to the question is no. There is no lost civilization, no frozen Atlantis under the Antarctic ice. The evidence against it is overwhelming. But the long answer is actually way more interesting, because there is a lost world under the ice. It's just not a human one. To understand what's really down there, we have to peel back the layers of myth and then look at the incredible science that lets us see through a continent of ice. Let's start with the myths. They're popular for a reason. One of the most famous pieces of evidence is the Piri Reis map. This is a real map drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral. The map is famous because it shows the coasts of South America and Africa with surprising accuracy for its time. But the part that gets people excited is the bottom edge. Some people claim it shows the coastline of Antarctica, but without any ice on it. The theory goes like this. How could a 16th century admiral know what the coast of Antarctica looked like under the ice? Oh, he couldn't have. So, he must have copied it from a much, much older map. A map made by some forgotten advanced ancient civilization that charted the globe before the ice caps existed. Maybe the people from Atlantis. It's a cool idea, but it has a lot of problems. First, the coastline on the map doesn't actually match Antarctica very well. It's a bit of a stretch. Most mainstream historians and cartographers think it's more likely a distorted depiction of the South American coast, bent to fit on the parchment. Or it could be a representation of Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land that mapmakers believed had to exist to balance out the landmasses in the north. They were just guessing. The Piri Reis map is a fascinating historical document, but it's not a secret window into a pre-Ice Age world. Then you have the idea of a sudden catastrophe. This was popularized by a writer named Charles Hapgood, whose work in the 1950s caught the attention of even Albert Einstein for a little while. Hapgood's theory was called Earth crust displacement. He suggested that the entire outer crust of the Earth could sometimes slip and shift all at once, moving continents thousands of miles in a very short time. In his view, Antarctica wasn't always at the South Pole. It was once in a more temperate climate. Then, a sudden shift of the crust moved it to its current position, and its vibrant civilization was flash frozen. This theory explains how a warm weather civilization could have existed there and why it disappeared so quickly. The problem is the geology just doesn't support it. All the evidence we have points to continental drift, a process that moves continents at the speed your fingernails grow. It's incredibly slow, taking millions and millions of years. We can see the evidence of this slow crawl in the magnetic striping on the ocean floor and in the way the continents fit together like puzzle pieces. There's no evidence for a sudden catastrophic slippage of the entire crust. It's a dramatic idea, but the planet just doesn't work that way. And what about those pyramids? You've probably seen the photos online, a sharp triangular peak sticking out of the ice, looking almost man-made. It's easy to look at that and think it can't be natural, but it is. The mountains of Antarctica are no different from mountains anywhere else. Some are jagged, some are rounded. When glaciers flow around a mountain peak, they can carve it from multiple sides, a process of erosion that naturally creates a pyramid-like shape called a horn. The Matterhorn in the Alps is a famous example. The pyramids of Antarctica are just mountains. They're natural geological formations, not eroded monuments from a lost empire. So if the myths aren't true, what is? What's really under all that ice? This is where the story gets really good. For a long time, we had no idea. Antarctica is huge. It's bigger than the United States and Mexico combined, and on average, the ice covering it is over a mile thick. In some places, it's almost 3 miles thick. It's the coldest, driest, and highest continent on Earth. For most of human history, it was a complete mystery, a giant blank spot on the map labeled unknown. But in the last few decades, that has completely changed. We now have the technology to see through the ice. We can map the hidden continent below in stunning detail. We do this primarily with something called ice-penetrating radar. Scientists fly over the continent in specially equipped planes that send radio waves down into the ice. The ice is mostly transparent to these waves. They go right through it until they hit the solid rock underneath, then they bounce back up to a receiver on the plane. By measuring how long it takes for the waves to travel down and back, scientists can calculate the thickness of the ice with incredible precision. But it does more than that. The reflected signal can also tell us about the shape of the land beneath. Is it flat? Is it a sharp peak? Is it a deep canyon? By flying back and forth in a grid pattern, mission after mission for years, scientists have slowly and painstakingly built a complete map of the continent that lies beneath the ice sheet. They also use other methods. Seismic surveys, which are like using sound waves to create an ultrasound of the Earth's crust, help them understand the rock layers. Gravity sensors can detect subtle changes in gravity, which reveal the density of the rock below. This denser rock from a mountain range will have a slightly stronger gravitational pull than a deep subglacial trench. Magnetic sensors map the magnetic properties of the rock, giving clues about its volcanic history. When you put all this data together, a picture emerges. A hidden continent is revealed. And it is spectacular. What we've discovered is that Antarctica isn't just a flat, boring piece of land under a dome of ice. It's a dynamic and varied landscape, just like any other continent. It has vast plains, sprawling valleys, and huge mountain ranges. One of the most mind-blowing discoveries is a mountain range called the Gamburtsev Mountains. They are located right in the middle of East Antarctica, one of the most remote places on the planet. And they are totally buried under the ice. We're talking about a mountain range that is the size of the European Alps. It's about 750 miles long, with peaks that scientists estimate rise to 9,000 feet. Yet, the tops of these peaks are buried under another mile of ice. Nobody knew they were there until a Soviet team detected them by chance in the late 1950s. For decades, they remained a mystery. How could a huge, young-looking mountain range exist in the center of an old, stable continent? It was a geological puzzle. Using the new mapping technologies, we now understand them much better. We think they are very old, first pushed up when continents collided hundreds of millions of years ago. They were then eroded down, but were lifted up again by more recent geological activity before the ice arrived to bury and preserve them. They are like a ghost mountain range. Their presence felt only through the instruments of a passing plane. And then there's the water. This might be the most surprising discovery of all. Underneath miles of ice, where you'd expect everything to be frozen solid, there is liquid water. A lot of it. Scientists have discovered more than 400 subglacial lakes beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. The most famous of these is Lake Vostok. It's one of the largest lakes in the world. It's about the size of Lake Ontario, but it's buried under 2.5 miles of solid ice. How is this even possible? Two things are at play. First, the immense weight of the ice above creates incredible pressure, which lowers the freezing point of water. Second, there is geothermal heat. Just like anywhere else on Earth, a small amount of heat is constantly flowing out from the planet's interior. Normally, this heat just radiates away into space, but in Antarctica, the massive ice sheet acts like a giant perfect blanket. It traps that geothermal heat, allowing it to build up at the base of the ice. The combination of pressure and this trapped heat is just enough to melt the very bottom layer of the ice sheet, creating vast hidden lakes and river systems. These lakes are some of the most isolated ecosystems on Earth. The water in Lake Vostok, for example, has been cut off from the outside world for millions of years. It's a pristine ancient environment. Scientists have been incredibly careful about studying it, because they don't want to contaminate it. They've managed to drill down close to the lake and sample the ice that has frozen onto its surface from the lake water below. In that refrozen ice, they found the DNA of thousands of different microbes. It's proof that life can exist in these extreme, dark, cold environments. It's not a lost city, but in a way, it's a lost world of biology, a potential preview of the kinds of life we might one day find on icy moons, like Europa or Enceladus. So, we have a continent with buried mountain ranges the size of the Alps and hidden lakes, the size of Lake Ontario. We have a world that is not dead and static, but dynamic, with water flowing in rivers we can't see. This is the real Antarctica. But this still doesn't answer the core question about civilization. To do that, we need to go back in time, not a few thousand years, but millions of years. The reason there's no lost human civilization under the ice is simple timing. Antarctica wasn't always a frozen wasteland. It used to be warm, very warm. It was part of a giant supercontinent called Gondwana, which also included South America, Africa, India, and Australia. Back in the time of the dinosaurs, Antarctica was located further north. It had a temperate, and in some places even tropical, climate. We know this because we found the fossils. Even today, on the parts of Antarctica that aren't covered by ice, like the Antarctic Peninsula, paleontologists have found the fossilized remains of ancient forests. They found fossilized leaves from southern beech trees, ferns, and conifers. They've found petrified wood. This was a green world. It had rivers and forests and a whole ecosystem of animals. We found fossils of dinosaurs there, including armored ankylosaurs and large herbivores. We found fossils of pterosaurs, the flying reptiles, and plesiosaurs in the seas around it. We've even found fossils of marsupials, linking Antarctica to the wildlife of Australia. This was the true lost world of Antarctica, a vibrant, living continent teeming with plants and animals. But this was a very, very long time ago. The dinosaurs died out about 66 million years ago. For a while after that, Antarctica remained relatively warm and forested. So what happened? Why did it freeze? It was a slow, gradual process driven by continental drift. Antarctica slowly broke away from Australia and South America and began drifting south, right over the geographic South Pole. The real turning point happened around 34 million years ago. A crucial seaway, now known as the Drake Passage, opened up between the southern tip of South America and the Antarctic Peninsula. Before this, warm ocean currents from the equator could travel south and keep Antarctica's climate mild. But once that gap opened, a new ocean current formed the Antarctic Circumpolar Current. This is a massive cold water current that circles the entire continent, uninterrupted by any other landmass. It effectively created a thermal barrier. It cut Antarctica off from the warm waters of the rest of the world. The continent became thermally isolated. Once isolated at the pole, it began to get very cold. Glaciers started to form on the tops of the highest mountains. Over millions of years, these glaciers grew and merged. They flowed downhill, covering more and more of the land. Slowly, relentlessly, the great ice sheets of East and West Antarctica formed, burying the mountains, the valleys, and the forests. The green continent was entombed in white. We can read this history in the ice itself. Scientists drilled deep into the ice sheet, pulling out ice cores that are miles long. These cores are like a timeline of the Earth's climate. Each layer of ice corresponds to a year's snowfall. By analyzing the air bubbles trapped in the ice, scientists can measure the amount of carbon dioxide in the ancient atmosphere. By analyzing the isotopes of oxygen in the water molecules, they can calculate the temperature of the planet when that snow fell. These ice cores give us a continuous record of the climate stretching back almost a million years. And they tell an unambiguous story. Antarctica has been locked in a deep freeze for a very, very long time. And this brings us back to the question of a lost civilization. The timing is completely wrong. The Great Freeze-Up of Antarctica began around 34 million years ago. The continent was more or less completely covered in its modern ice sheets by about 15 million years ago. Now, think about human history. Our earliest hominid ancestors, the ones who were just starting to walk on two legs in Africa, didn't appear until around 6 or 7 million years ago. The genus Homo, our direct ancestors, evolved around 2.5 million years ago. And our own species, Homo sapiens, modern humans, have only been around for about 300,000 years. Civilization itself, cities, writing, organized agriculture is only a few thousand years old. The timeline makes a lost civilization impossible. By the time creatures that could even be considered remotely human were evolving in Africa, Antarctica had already been a frozen, lifeless wasteland for millions of years. There was no one there to build cities. There was no one there to chart maps. The temperate, green Antarctica, the one with forests and dinosaurs, disappeared millions of years before we ever existed. So, there is a continent under the ice. It is not lost, it is just buried. We have mapped it. We know its shape. It has mountains and canyons and plains, and there was a lost world on that continent. But it was a world of prehistoric plants and animals, from an era of Earth's history that is almost unimaginably distant from our own. The truth of Antarctica is in many ways more profound than the myth. The idea of a lost city is a human-centric fantasy. It places us, our creations, and our story at the center of the mystery. The reality is a story about the planet itself. It's a story about deep time, about forces of nature so vast and slow they are hard to comprehend. It's a story of how the entire climate of a planet can be changed by continents slowly drifting a few inches a year, opening up a gap for an ocean current to flow. The real Antarctica is a time capsule. The ice preserves a record of our planet's climate. The land underneath preserves a geological landscape from a bygone age. The lakes underneath preserve isolated pockets of life that have evolved in darkness for millions of years. It's a place that teaches us about planetary mechanics, climate change, and the absolute resilience of life in the most extreme conditions. It's natural to be drawn to the idea of a frozen city. It's a romantic, exciting notion. But the reality doesn't diminish the wonder of Antarctica, it just changes its focus. The mystery is not about a lost civilization. The mystery is about the planet. What other secrets are locked in the ice? What forms of life are thriving in those subglacial lakes? What can the very oldest ice at the bottom of the sheet tell us about the Earth's ancient atmosphere? These are the questions that drive scientists today. They are still flying those planes, still drawing their maps, still drilling for those ice cores. They are still exploring a hidden continent. There are no pyramids, no frozen towers. But there is a world down there, and we are only just beginning to understand it. The truth in this case is a much bigger, older, and more magnificent story than any myth.